what I didn't mention in my previous previous lectures was that Livonian has been used in very limited positions. So it has not been a language of church, although it was Livonians were first in Latvian in territory, current day territory of Latvia, to be Christianized already back in the 13th century. But language of the church has always been different, either before Reformation Latin and after Reformation German, later on Latvian as well. And this is also true for the Livonian coast and other areas where Livonians were living. There are somehow some hints that first book published in Latvian and in Estonian, it happened back in 1525. That was connected with Reformation, and that book is not somehow didn't survive to these days, but the mention of it has survived. So, and the book was published as according to the mentions in Latvian, in Estonian, and in one more language used in Livonia, which was the historical state which got its origin from the Livonian lands. So, and there are kind of shared opinions what language that book was in. So one opinion is that it was indeed published in the Livonian, and because Livonian presence at that time was that much bigger. Another version is that it was like local German, because German was the official kind of administrative language of Livonian state, or state of the Livonia. And well, but they didn't really survive, and there are no clues about whether Livonian has ever been used in church language before that. However, in 20th century, Livonian was a little bit becoming a church language. In 30s, there was a Finnish priest called Helle Kalervo, who came to study Livonian and performed some of the liturgies in Livonian churches as well, and in Livonian homesteads. But that was very brief moment in history. Later on, in the end of the 30s, there was a priest that was from the Livonian region, Edgar Valgama, who was sent to Finland to study and to become a priest, so that Livonian would become a language used in church. However, the Second World War broke out, and he stayed in Finland, serving in ET church for quite a long time. And however, there were religious texts translated into Livonian, starting from the first texts, which was Gospel of Matthew, as I mentioned, and the New Testament, and a couple of liturgies as well. So those liturgical texts have survived until this day. However, officially, it was not church language at all. So the same thing was about schools. There was this time from 1921 till 1940, actually, till the occupation of Latvia, where it was possible to study Livonian as an optional subject in the schools of the Livonian coast. However, after that, it has not been, so no full school language was introduced, firstly because of the lack of the teachers, of course. So school language generally was Latvian throughout that time. So Livonian had a little presence in these two areas. So it was mostly, when Livonian coast existed, Livonian was mostly a language of that was spoken at home and also at work. So it was common language on fishing boats as well, as a working language, despite the fact that Livonian coast had tight connections with Saaremaa Island. So there was very regular transportation. There were kids coming coming to Livonian coast for the summer to take care for the animals. And there was people from Saaremaa Island who came to work on Livonian boats for fishing, and then went back to Saaremaa. Some of them sometimes stayed. But that as a common language used in that specific working area was Livonian. So mostly people from Saaremaa, so they learned Livonian as well, in addition to their own language. So in the public space, so Livonian was visible not much. Let's say maybe I told you about Matthew's Gospel of that was published in St. Petersburg in the second part of the 19th century, and that was the first time, the first book in Livonian that reached Livonian people, and people did hold that on the shelf as a proof of existence of the language, or the unique document which with the language were printed. And but in public space, there was not many examples of Livonian usage. Actually, up until 90s, 2000s. Here you can see just some examples how Livonian was on display. So one which was very popular actually in homesteads around the Livonian coast. So the picture on the right, there was this such prints. This with different Livonian sentences. So, and then this is probably one of the most popular sentence in Livonian. Randa keļmi niemā keļ pivā minanums in eļ. So this is a couple of rhymes from the poem of most well-known Livonian poet Korlis Talte, and it says that Livonian language, my native language, holy for me is your voice. So this is something that basically every Livonian knows this poem, and it was actually popular already in 20s when it was written. Then, as you can see, there are some examples that there were some transprints in Livonian, like on the left you see written. This is transparent from the opening ceremony of the Livonian National House, and then you had this written down that greetings to our kind of contributors, but the maybe most visible single one up until very late in a public space was this flag at the Livonian National House, which describes National House's building history. And in Livonian it says, "Kodāt līblist eitandenš izāmo Latviejenš sugūd Soma Eestie Ungāra rovd apkaks." So this house was built by the Livonians with the help of their homeland Latvia and their relatives Finns, Estonians, and Hungarians. There is like two such flags at the National House. One is in Latvian and Livonian, and the second one is in Finnish, Estonian, and Hungarian. But that was like the place in the public space where Livonian was, like, since 1939 up until this day. This flag stays there. So another examples are in the Livonian coast. If we look by such kind of fixed examples of the Livonian language, is the monument for Livonian poets, which was, again, I told you a little bit about that, which was erected in the 70s, and it bears the names of Livonian poets who are buried in Pisa, or in Latin Miķeto cemetery. However, most interestingly, if you happen to wander around the Livonian coast, there is one place where Livonian actually has been used and has been living in a written form, and these are cemeteries. So in every cemetery of the Livonian coast, if you look closely, among those inscriptions in Latvian, you find some inscriptions in Livonian. The oldest one is here that you can see. So this is from 19th century already. old metal cross. It's a Quokka cemetery, but you can see these all around the cemeteries. But again, you have to look closely to find them, to locate them among mostly Latvian inscriptions. And here on the left, this is a quite well-known monument that American Livonian, Livonian captain who went to work to United States, to New York. So he sent a plaque for his parents, and it's erected in Ire, in Latvian Mazirbe, which is central part of the Livonian coast. And he wrote down Livonian as he knew, so not in very precise way, but there is a big, quite a long epitaph on that. And then you can see, so these older plaques, like on the right, this is as it says, see it's no, but Igānis Jumala Armsans, here Katriņa Volganskis. So here in the God's peace are resting Ans and Katriņa Volganski. So this is the place where you can see it the same way. Like here is example from Quokka from quite newer time, and then you can see that even very recent sort of graveyards also have. So what is important about these plaques is that, well, they display not only the Livonian language, but they also are kind of manifestations of Livonian identity, and especially by the identity that is living on within the family. So because those plaques, of course, are not erected by those people who are buried there. So it's their relatives, it's their children, and it just shows that how important this Livonian language has been for that person, and for also the children respect that, and children have used that in those memorial plaques. So this is kind of a manifestation of Livonian identity as well. So today, I would say that starting maybe second part of 90s, in 2000s, there are more tendency of using Livonian language in a visible in a visual space. So just answer question on the run about whether these graveyard inscriptions all documented. So basically yes, but not somehow collected into one collection. So but they have been kind of all identified, but because they are not only in the Livonian coast. There are some Livonians that are buried in for example, in Riga, in Ventspils, and other places. So, and then you can find also inscriptions in Livonian in other places. But these are, of course, a needle in a stack of hay, because there are much more kind of people buried outside Livonian coast than in it. Okay, so again, in 2000s, in the second part of 90s, this kind of attraction to the Livonian language, to the Livonian symbols became more and more important, and also this is kind of especially started to become important in tourism industry, because there's someone's mic is on. Sorry, can you check your mics, please? Because as Livonian coast became empty over the time, then and it used to have the key industry was fishing industry. So nowadays, if you look at that, so the key industry is tourism industry, vocational industry, which is unfortunately mostly based on the summer, as a nice beach and warm sea, and everything is fine, and then winter gets empty. But nevertheless, the tourism industry is something that is working in the Livonian coast, and then basically saving its economy, which is very weak anyway. And then two things that have started to appear. So one that I already told are Livonian flags, so Livonian colors as a kind of manifestation of this place belonging to this kind of Livonian heritage space. or the last inhabited area by the Livonians, but also they have started to appear in different ways in kind of local signs. Like on the left, you can see that there is Jūra in Latvian and Mer in Livonian, and then sea in English, or names of the enterprises like Pisa. There's a campsite in Miķertonis, and Miķertonis, its Livonian name is Pisa, so basically the campsite is named after the village name. And then one of the most maybe pilot projects is here you can see on the right. There are this is in Kolka Cape, so there's an enterprise that runs tourism industry in that Kolka Cape, and they decided at one moment that they would like to put up signs also containing Livonian, and so. It's for the last 10 years. So they are doing this, and it's became their like kind of key principle that whatever text they publish, they try to do it in also in Livonian. So here you can see some more of examples of that. So yeah. And then, of course, those signs are coming up, but these are kind of unofficial signage. So this is more like a local project, tourism projects, and things like that. And of course, the key visible place, and here we talk not only about Livonian language, but broader about Livonian heritage. Intangible heritage is Livonian Festival, which takes place on the first weekend, first Saturday of August each year. And this is the place where actually it's the biggest festival devoted to current day Livonian intangible heritage, and maybe the best place where to meet all the Livonians and get acquainted with Livonian culture today, because it is used as also for those Livonians living outside Livonian coast that they try to kind of gather or try to visit on a planned basis. This festival. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to show. When I talked about this Kolka Cape enterprise that runs Kolka Cape, they actually started not by signage, not by kind of directional signs. They started by garbage bins. And here you can see in the middle. So the garbage bin. This was the first place for Livonian to appear in the Livonian coast. So on the garbage bin, just following the Latvian and saying, thank you, as it reads in English. But this is a good start for really introducing Livonian. And also, so there are those signs and usage of Livonian, especially in Livonian coast, has broadened. And of course, Livonian is also used in the tourism products in like here is one great idea, and kind of tourism entrepreneurs have started to understand, and especially those with who have this Livonian roots, then that like one thing is to sell nice beaches and nice vacation times, but the other thing is, and people are getting more and more interested in the culture, in the heritage of the place. And they started to introduce much more kind of Livonian heritage and the language in what they do. And this is a beautiful example. There's a guy, a Livonian from Īra, which is Elearning in Latvian, who is offering boat rides. So basically, his business is very simple. So he's renting boats out. But what he did was like two things that you can both see in this picture. So that one, he purchased his boats in particularly in Livonian colors, so which to distinguish them from other boats, from yellow, red, green, and etc. And the second thing that he did was like, well, every boat needs the name so that he could kind of recognize them. And what he did was he very simply numbered the boats in the Livonian. As you can see, each one says 7, each 5. And what the effect was that people started to ask, like, what does it mean? And then he kind of could explain that, it is in Livonian and these are numbers and etc. etc. So kind of serving as an ambassador for the Livonian heritage for those who actually don't know anything and might not notice this Livonian heritage when they come for vacation or a nice boat ride on a sleepy river. So now the newest thing in this visibility is, and this is also why this visibility is important, is now there has been a long, prolonged discussion about using Livonian in road signage and official road signage. Now, not only on kind of volunteer level, and now this year there are plans to introduce like complete signage of the Livonian coast with bilingual signs, Latvian and Livonian, which is a common practice, for example, in Ireland or in Norway or in Finland. So this was kind of no surprise, but for Latvia, it took quite a long discussion, starting from acknowledging that Latvia does have this indigenous population, which are Livonians, and also kind of finding the right motivation, like why should this Livonian coast have such a signage? And these signs, in my opinion, so they and also in opinion of municipalities, so they are kind of, they serve dual purpose. So one thing is that they kind of spotlight Livonian heritage. So they kind of show that this place, that this Livonian coast that you're traveling through has this kind of different cultural layer. So this is something special. This is something interesting. So this is something to leave money and to boost tourism industry as well. And the second thing is what is important for Livonian community itself, because Livonian community, despite the fact that it lives outside the Livonian coast, it is still very closely connected with the coast, as it has. This is kind of a land that they have been expelled from. So and this is the place where people visit, either for Livonian festival or for some other occasions, or some have their homes there. And then for them, it's also important to see that the language has the place, and not place only in kind of in your mind, in your feelings, in your heart, but also in the physical universe, in a physical space, that it is kind of a manifestation that the Livonian coast is still Livonian land, despite the fact that that majority of Livonians live outside of it, and probably will never to return. So this is just some examples of how hopefully Livonian coast will start looking like later on this summer. And of course, this visibility I already mentioned before. So this visibility has been increased now also by the efforts to show the belonging of places to this Livonian historical space, and it has been done by the current year, which is a year of Livonian heritage, and also especially by this Livonian Heritage Day. So this is kind of a direction that takes more and more work to really on a physical space make Livonian language and heritage visible and accessible, because this heritage exists kind of throughout Latvia, throughout these areas where Livonians have lived. However, not usually word Livonian is mentioned. So people sometimes think that, well, this is some kind of like, for example, this is just a hill fort, and so the word that is missing in that description, that this is actually Livonian hill fort, and it's connected with Livonian heritage. So there are very seldomly word Livonian used attached to the objects themselves. So people simply they know the objects, but they kind of don't connect them with this Livonian heritage, and therefore kind of also disvalue the importance of the Livonian heritage in a broader sense. So another example of this is, which is like bad example in a sense, is for example, in Ventspils opening a museum, so they are preparing new exposition that talks about Livonian coast and last 200 years livelihood in the Livonian coast, and barely mentions any Livonians. So for them, it's like they are telling the story about how the coastal life was. However, all the coastal life that they're talking about is only Livonian coastal. It doesn't like kind of consider any other places in Courland where there were kind of Latvian or Livonian influenced Latvian coastal dwellers, and that is kind of that is not a good example at all, just because it is kind of avoiding and adding up to the fact that Livonians have been cleared in many aspects from the story of Latvia. This is something that we try to change with that. Then, of course, Livonian language and Livonian culture is presented. You can find some of information on the internet, and now we already entering the kind of second part of this lecture, which is devoted more to the resources and where to find kind of materials or Livonian language as such, and there are kind of different web pages that not web pages, actually social networking profiles that are connected with Livonian heritage. For example, there's a choir in Salaspils near Riga who are working with Livonian horror material, so they are collecting it and using it on organizing singing festivals. And then there is one very good example, which is OeAD-GmbH. So there's a kind of Facebook profile, and what they do is that they here are examples. So they public they post every day kind of either a word or a phrase in Livonian. And they do that, as you can see here, in Latvian and in English as well. So referencing to the dictionary, so to kind of ensure that what they do is really correct and people can explore more. And this is kind of they have quite a lot of followers. And so this is something that is really promoting Livonian on a daily basis. And there, of course, are many others who have tried both to promote Livonian language and culture, but also kind of inner groups. Like here you can see also, for example, Mierlinkist, which is a closed group for those who are participating in a summer school. Mierlinkist every day, and there is Lībiešu krastaļaudis or people of the Livonian coast. So this is a group for those who live in the Livonian coast, which is also kind of sharing information about Livonian heritage and events, and many others. And then, however, all these pages more or less operate in Latvian, or in some cases in other languages. Apart of two, so this OeAD-GmbH, which is devoted to one precise task, and then today, actually the only place which uses Livonian for as a language of the posts is our institute's webpage that we post. The kind of policy includes that we are trying to post in 3 languages on social networks, which are Livonian, Latvian, and English. So sometimes also Estonian, Finnish. It depends on the particular events. needs of coverage. So then, up until current day, the main source for general information on the Livonians, although it's a bit outdated already, and kind of keeping a track of what's happening in the Livonian cultural space since 2006 is portal Livonian.net, and it really tries to keep keep a chronicle in the forms of posts of what has happened in regards with Livonian heritage. So this is about internet resources. We will come back to one resource that I didn't mention here, Livonian Tech, a little later on when we come back to the what we do at the institute. But now a little bit about collections and places where you can actually get acquainted with Livonian language and culture, and primarily culture for now, and that keep also collections of Livonian tangible and intangible heritage. So first of all, if we start from the Livonian coast, then it's Livonian Community House in Kolka, or Kolka in Latvian, which is quite new. So it is built. So it was built like 5 years ago, and it was meant to be kind of a place for socializing of people of Kolka. And Kolka, as you remember, is the biggest village currently in the Livonian coast. Now, already second year in a row, that they have an exposition devoted to this Kolka, and it's called Kolka Two Seas and Three Languages. So the three languages here it's meaning Latvian, then local Latvian, Livonian-like dialect, and Livonian. As all the present. So, and this is the place where you come to Livonian coast, where you can get kind of a brief overview of what's happening in Kolka and around, or what has happened in Kolka and around in regards with Livonian. This is also the kind of a key tourism center and key place to disperse the information about Livonians and their heritage. The next one, already briefly mentioned, is Ventspils Open Air Museum, and it is an interesting place to visit. So it might seem a little bit like an attraction for children at one moment, but it really has quite a nice collection, and it has a collection of fishing boats, and then there's a kind of an enclave of houses that originate from the Livonian coast, and this is kind of a mini Livonian village with even with the railway, which is actually the key attraction in this open air museum. So it has one homestead from the Livonian coast. Then it has a Baptist church that was taken from the Livonian coast. And by the way, baptism, that is one thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about Livonian as a church language. Surprisingly enough, so there were baptism, or some kind of evangelic religion, was quite popular in Courland and particularly in Livonian coast. So Livonian coast had two working churches. One of them is on display in this open air museum, and the second one is still standing in Pitrak, which is in Latvian Pitraks in the Livonian coast. And surprisingly enough, Livonian was, to the certain extent, a working language of the Baptist church, because they had a kind of their own songs that they were singing and the services. And some of these songs were originally written and translated into Livonian. So there are even recordings of those Baptist songs. There's a voice recordings that are found. And then the Baptist Church is also guilty for having Livonian diaspora in such countries as Brazil. So in 1920s, there was a priest that announced that end of the world will approach soon, and people have to abandon what they have, and they have to wait for a white ship coming from the sky. And best place to do it somehow is Brazil, for some reasons unknown for me. And many Livonians, as well as many Latvians, sold everything they had, bought a ticket to Brazil, and moved over there to wait for the end of the world, which apparently, as we know today, didn't arrive. So they didn't have any money to return back home. So they stayed there, and there are still a small community of those people, Baptists with Livonian heritage, who do remember and who do recognize that their Livonian roots and their Livonian connections. However, in Ventspils Open Air Museum, in addition to these houses, there is also this railroad, and the railroad is basically the same railroad that ran through the Livonian coast and used to be almost a symbol of Livonian coast in 20s, 30s. A railroad was built, so it was military railroad built by Germans in 1916, so to support Frontline, which was Livonian coast. And so it's called in German Fieldbahn. There was quite extended network of those Fieldbahns built over in Latvia, so, and it was like kind of a main transportation unit that opened up Livonian coast much more, and it is quite widely described. And it was also the main artery when the researchers coming to Livonian coast or supporters coming to Livonian coast used. So there are pictures also from those supporters like Lauri Kettunen and others in Ire railroad station, which is also a replica of Ire or Mazir railroad station, is in this museum. So we have like kind of a small hub or small picture of those Livonian coast of 20s, 30s in that museum, where you can even take this a railroad ride from the Ire church. So okay, so now the next next place again speaking is again someone mic is on, is Latvian Ethnographical Open Air Museum. So this is located in Riga. And this is quite unique. So it was built in 30s. The museum itself as a museum of kind of folk architecture. So basically, it's kind of Swedish Skansen. The idea came from that, but here it was used kind of really to put on display all over the Latvia, different houses. And one of the houses that is there is a Livonian fisherman's house from the Livonian coast, from the western part. And it is very important for two reasons. The first thing is this is one of the places that really has this Livonian name attached to it, so we can see it. The second thing is that it is actually the sole surviving house from the western part, because western part, as I mentioned in my previous lecture, was burned down during the First World War, and this house somehow, all the homestead stayed intact. And it was brought to this in 1970s. It was brought to the Open Air Museum for the display. And the Open Air Museum also has been the place that has the key place, one of the two key places in Latvia that have ethnographic collection of ethnographical items. And they are kind of their kind of niche that they work on. And last year they published a catalog of all Latvia's museums with ethnographical items found that can be found all over the Latvia, so in official and accredited museums, and that you can see on the right. And they themselves have actually second largest collection is stored there, so they work on that pretty much. The another, actually, the main museum and main collection of the Livonian artifacts is in Latvian National Museum of History, so which is by default located in the Riga Castle. So currently, Riga Castle is being restored, so they moved out, but they have kind of two collections, two key collections. So one is again the biggest collection of ethnographical items, and that comes from that it started out as a kind of museum of Latvia, museum of Latvians. So they have their collection starting mid-19th century. And then another part that they have is a huge collection of archaeology and archaeological artifacts. And these are like kind of two strong points that are in Latvia regarding Livonian heritage. So this is ethnography, or ethnographical items, and another strong is everything that is connected with archaeology. So in other words, so these collections are based on items. So you don't need kind of you don't have this language barrier because items do not speak or not written in Livonian language that few people know. So this is why actually Latvia has mostly these kind of collections, which are obvious also as it is called, especially archaeology. So it's connected with land. Then in addition to that, there are two museums to be mentioned, or not two more collections of archaeology that to be mentioned. So one is University of Latvia Institute of History. So they have quite a lot of quite big collection from the excavations, and especially bone material, for example, they are main holders of that. So this is their main collection, and the second one is Tura Museum, Tura the Castle Museum, and they have specifically archaeology devoted archaeology that comes from Gauja, Livonian Koiva Livonians, which is another group a little bit north from Riga. Now finishing and leaving Latvia, and now we come to actually even bigger collections that are located outside Latvia, and the first of them is Estonian National Museum. That is located in Tartu. They have a permanent exhibition called Urali Kaya, Ural Echoes of Ural. And they have, this is dedicated to Uralic people, and there is a small part also dedicated for Livonians. However, they have quite a good collection of Livonian ethnographical items, including such peculiar things as replicas of Livonian traditional food in papier-mâché form, which are quite funny to watch. And but these collections that they have been collecting in 20s, 30s primarily, but then also afterwards in 60s, 70s, and sometimes even 80s. So this is quite a big collection, and I would say that it is close to what we have in Latvia, actually. So then, from the Livonian perspective, extremely important. And now we come to the intangible heritage, and it is Estonian Literary Museum. So Estonian Literary Museum, it was separated in the history from Estonian National Museum as a separate part. It has a extremely big collection. First of all, of folklore material, because that's the key place for having folklore. As folklore archives of Estonia were founded by Oskar Lorits, so the same researcher who actually came to the Livonian coast and collected Livonian folklore. And so all the Livonian folklore material is located there. Actually, the original collection, so it has the Livonian Livonian folk songs. It has all the materials that Oskar Loritz used for his PhD thesis on Livonian mythology. It has a vast collection of Livonian folk tales, etc., etc. So, and plus, it also has archives of different big names, such as the same Oskar Loritz. So there are letters that were exchanged between people in Tartu and the Livonian coast. So it also hosts Livonian ethnographical terminology catalog. It has like lots of materials connected with intangible heritage, and this is a key collection for Livonian language, written language materials in general. So Latvia also has a little collection of here and there. Looking back, so for example, from folklore side, there is Latvian composer Emīls Melngailis who made his collection of the Livonian folk songs, but with Latvian collections, there's one huge problem. When Estonian collections found in Estonia are written down in Livonian, in proper Livonian, so because people collecting them actually knew Livonian, then collections in Latvia are mostly written down by people who didn't know any Livonian. So, for example, the Emīls Melngailis collection, which might be good from the melody perspective, but they are very poor in language sense, because he wrote down Livonian by his hearing, so not knowing anything of that, which I a little bit wonder. So why didn't he ask for any outside help? But the result is that basically to decipher what he's written down, you need Estonian collections, so that you can find similarities and identify what is written in the Latvian collections. So the same is true, for example, with the place name collections that have been collected in Latvia, so by Latvian researchers. So they have written down Livonian place names in some occasions, but again, according to how they hear it, and that means that they have to be deciphered. So then going further on, another extremely important collection is located in Estonian Language Institute. And the Estonian Language Institute is in Tallinn. And what they have, it was founded after the Second World War as a separate institution to work on research, as a kind of part of Academy of Sciences of Estonia initially. And they had quite, and still up to this day, they are very active in researching Estonian and kindred languages, like Livonian, and also collecting material for that. So they have, for example, Livonian small place name collection, but the main value what is there are recordings that was made during many expeditions to the Livonian coast. So these recordings is something that really have to be yet used, because they are only partially digitized. Livonian has been recorded as a voice recording since actually 1923, where the first voice recordings made already on a phonograph, and these collections can be found in Tartu, because they were made by Oskar Loritz as a part of the folklore recordings. But here you have those recordings that were made for language purposes. So there are very many good examples of Livonian language yet to be used. So now we come to Finland, and Finland is again one very important place for the Livonian collection. So in Finland, traditions of Livonian research can in some way date even earlier. than in Estonia, because they started since 1846 from the Andres Stefan Sjögren, Finn himself, and his archives are partially also available in Finnish archives. Then it was followed, there was a huge expedition of 1888 by Emil Nestor Setälä, whose collection is, of course, in Finland and in Finnish archives. But they also collected during those expeditions and also afterwards in 20s, 30s. They collected lots of ethnographical items, and the good thing about Finland is that Museum Board of Finland has digitized during the COVID. So digitized before the COVID pandemic time, but they opened access for all the collections that they have publicly. So if you go to the Museovirasto page and you write in this Liiviläiset or Liiviläis, maybe even better, was like here, then you basically see numbers of both ethnographical items and also old photographies, which is one of the first kind of photographical documentation of Livonian livelihoods back in second part of 19th century already. This is something that that might be very interesting for those who want to look to the material culture. So and then in Finland, of course, in addition to these, you can find like more and more collections. I already mentioned Sjögren's collections, then Setälä collections, which are linguistic collections with linguistic language materials. But you also can find language recordings done, for example, by Seppo Suhonen back in 70s. You can find also quite many artifacts and many with a lot of kind of second-hand information, like letters and stuff circulating between Livonian coast and Finland again in 20s, 30s especially, and as especially in 30s, Finns were very active supporting Livonian issues, so they were participating in preparing and printing books and kind of well, you're probably searching the wrong place, William. If there are no results, should come right away. Okay, so now these are like there are quite a lot of collections actually of the Livonian heritage. The key problem is that they are very dispersed. So you already now you can see that there are three different key countries, and these are only key countries where you can find Livonian heritage. So there's a huge collection in St. Petersburg, which is inaccessible, and I don't know when it will be open again. Especially from 19th century, from Sjögren's Wiedemann's expeditions, Valts Livonian materials are there. Fortunately, they have been used already in preparing books about Valts Livonian language. So there are collections in Sweden, collections in other countries as well. But even in every country, so these kind of Livonian collections are not found in the same places. Even to make a simple thing is a catalog of things in Latvia. So these ethnographical items in Latvia took a lot of effort because not always Livonian collections or Livonian items are kind of described as Livonian items. So you have to kind of identify them by other means, like for example, what village it comes from, like even those ethnographical items. So you don't have this kind of a list of here are Livonian things. There's like things from this village and that village. So it makes it harder. The same thing is connected with the language barrier. Estonian Literary Museum was not up until 90s. So they had a collection of kind of Livonian materials, but as there were not enough people to understand what is in the collection, so they didn't really know what's the content. So this was the way how a Livonian ethnographical dictionary or the terminology catalog was found in the same. Well, it was there all the time in the Estonian Literary Museum. Just it wasn't catalog because nobody understood what is it. Yeah. Okay.
Well, could you answer the question about New World and Canada?
Yeah, I was about to do it. Yeah. So no, in the New World, in a form of collection, no. So in a form of publicly available collection, as far as I know. So I know that there are private collections, though. So because there was diaspora of Livonians, scattered diaspora of Livonians in Canada and in the United States, and so they had their private kind of materials that they had. And yeah, for example, there is something from Griseld Kristina said there is something that has been sent later on by Zelma Belt, Livonian painter. But not such kind of museum-like or kind of public collections or archives. And our colleague in the Institute, Uldis Balodis, have been researched a little bit of that Livonian diaspora. And so there are some places where their material has ended up. And yeah, so it's probably maybe he can give them more information directly about that. Yeah, Museovirasto. Yes, that's it. Okay, so now about well, I think that I will send you the link or after the break. Anyway, so now a little bit coming going further for looking towards digital resources for the Livonian language. And the first attempts actually to digitize or to use digital approaches for the Livonian already took place in mid-90s. So it was in creation of Livonian Latvian Livonian dictionary, which was made electronically in a database format. However, the database didn't survive afterwards, but more active work began with the publication of Livonian Estonian Latvian dictionary, and it came out in 2012. But it took kind of a very long time to almost 40 years to compile. So this is up to current day, so the best source of Livonian. However, it has been evolved now further on. Just in a moment, I'll talk about that. But this dictionary was made in kind of analog way. So after the publishing and after it came out, it was transformed into databases. So it was like the first idea that we need to kind of get it up, not only in the paper version but also in the searchable version. So it then became kind of a publicly available database in University of Tartu. But then afterwards, the same material was evolved into kind of a database that is a core of our database cluster that we have here at the Institute. So, and that work started in 2016. So we basically, the problem was that the database that was created just right after the publishing of the dictionary was not easily updatable, nor it was like easy to add with some new information. So it took it was taken to another platform developed earlier in one completely different project, and it's started to serve as a base of what we have today. So which is so currently there are all the electronic resources that we have at the Livonian Institute are actually found in a web page called Livonian.tech. So this is a resource platform that we have. So it looks, you can look it up, and this is a little bit how it looks from outside. So from the public part, and this is what we have inside. So it's basically it is quite complicated database of interconnected various types of data. We'll a little bit talk about what we have and then what we are doing. So we started off with Estonian, Latvian, Estonian dictionary as base. So we added up for that dictionary. Later on, we added up morphology forms. So this is like there's one database which is dedicated to lexicographical items for vocabulary. Then another database which is connected with that is all grammatical forms, which basically if you go and click the number behind the word, so you can see all the grammatical forms that this word has. So you don't have to kind of construct in the head according to the type how should this word should look like, because Livonian grammar is rather complicated. So we have around 250 declination types and then some 70 conjugation types for verbs. So it is hard to memorize, and this is something that is kind of helping to get acquainted with the language. So what we have started now and what we are doing now, we are adding up to this dictionary also English version, so that all the words are accessible and all the lemmas and examples have their translations into Latvian, Estonian, and now also English. Not all of them. So if you will use that, you will see that it's only partially done, because this is an ongoing project. Then another thing that we have is besides those two databases, we also have Livonian Culture that we use for extracting data for those databases, both morphology and lexicography. Then we have database of place names, which is quite interesting. So you can see a map here, but also this is a searchable, so you can search according to the Livonian place name. So the map itself is it contains this database. If the lexicographical database is something like 13,000 lemmas currently, then place names have place name database has 1,200. Like 1,200 different place names, most of them geospatially attached, and those you can see on a map. And there are kind of macro toponyms, like names of the continents and oceans, and to down to the micro toponyms, to the small streams, to small kind of fields, and etc. etc. So this is what we collect, and here especially want to stress that we do not collect place names with Livonian origin yet. We collect place names fixed in Livonian, and that are found in the Livonian form in some of Livonian sources, preferably from Corpora. So another thing that we have started to add is a voice. So basically, this is also an ongoing project. We realized that there are kind of misconceptions and people for people it's very hard to know how the word or a sentence sounds like. So it is important to add also the voice to it. And we have, so now there is a lots of work done, but not that much is made public or published up. So there's still in processing. Colleague Tuli, who deals, who's the best phoneticist in Livonian issues up on today. So she's working on them, on processing and putting them up. Well, this is actually very interesting work that is kind of involves one of the key principles that we try to use, and that is involvement of Livonian language speakers, inherited language speakers who know the pronunciation, so who have not learned that from the books or from kind of second-hand sources, but who have this direct connection and who therefore are very good in pronunciation-wise. So the voice that you will hear is one of the such such persons, and yeah, so we have working in this project just as a Livonian, so not as a researcher, and this is something that it will take another 1 more year, so that they'll be fully equipped. All the entries will be fully equipped with the live language examples, and hopefully, so we have started cooperation also with our Estonian colleagues from Mathematics Institute in Estonia, so who will first of all build speech synthesizer based on what we have, so that we can add some or do some experiments on how that would work. And yeah, so basically our data is quite widely used by other researchers across Europe to kind of make experiments on languages with small data, which is like kind of specific area that we are working in, and it has its own specific, completely different problems that are different from the big majority languages. So basically, what we have, we can say that we have 3 key databases that we have as a core of this database cluster. So it's lexicography, morphology, and corpora. And then our key principle here is that everything is interconnected, because, as I mentioned, so we work in a niche, we work in a language which is under-resourced, under-researched, and we have to kind of be extremely effective to extract data properly and to extract as much data as possible. So this kind of a key difference is, if we talk about languages, like big languages, and by big I mean languages like Latvian, like Estonian, like languages which produce massive amounts of texts on daily basis. So the key difference is, for example, language technology, is that when they work on their technologies, then they have to gain quality from the quantity, so that they work with enormous masses of data. So they have to kind of extract quality from enormous masses. So we have to kind of achieve the same result. We have to achieve the same quality, but with extremely limited data. So there are completely different approaches. So there's, I would compare it like what the big languages do. So they kind of take a coconut and then throw away very lots of it, just to get to the small core inside the coconut. What we do is we take a lemon and we squeeze it out as much as possible, so that nothing much is left behind, or even like make an orange juice with like using every single thing that we can. So, and this is kind of a key principle that is also kind of incorporated in the structure and the principles in the methodology how we work. So then there are three databases in creation currently. So these are sources, people, and places. So from them, places already is there, as I told you. So this is a data geospatially linked database of Livonian place names, and these are important for yet another reason. So these are all interconnected, also with first three ones. But here is the thing that so in order to kind of have different perspectives, and again, so this is efficiency issue. So in order to have different perspectives, in order to verify the quality of what we see, we need much more information about where those texts or examples or language or intangible heritage examples originate from. So the place, who said them, what's the background, what source it was published in, what's the background of the source, like why these things and decisions were made. So this is and this is very important if you look from the perspective of authenticity, because Livonian is it has been very exposed to the outside world, and then to majority language, Latvian, and also to the context with other languages. So to understand and to understand what's authentic and what's not authentic, you have to have much more information. So you cannot rely, and that again is the difference between big language tech and small language tech. So when you have 10 examples, like if you have like let's say 3 mistakes in a case of big languages, big data, so you can be pretty sure that there will be thousands and thousands of right examples that clean these mistakes off. So they just eliminate this by the mass. So in Livonian case, we can have maybe 10 examples of something, and then we see that one is different. And in this case, we cannot statistically assume that as those nine that are similar are correct and that one is mistake. There could be as well situation that one is right and those 9 are mistakes which are by different reasons, and we just don't have sufficient data to statistically kind of overrule or make decisions purely statistically. So the quality is and the background is something that we really need to look for and need to understand. So, and the one database that is planned in the future, and this is connected a little bit with this Livonian heritage and making Livonian Livonian heritage more accessible, is that we are planning, based on this place name database, also to create geospatially linked database of the Livonian heritage, some kind of a map that people can explore places connected with Livonian. So here on the run, I will answer the question of William. So the corpora is actually public, however, currently, well, it's not publicly accessible, so it's public for researchers. So there are several reasons for that. Currently, we are in a process of rebuilding in a system, so I would not provide access yet to the corpora, so not to give a wrong impression of what's happening there, because it's in a process of rebuilding of the platform. But if you have further need for the Livonian corpora, just let us know, and I hope that in 1 or 2 months the corpora will be back on work. Okay, so continuing with that. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the basic idea is that also this kind of integration of databases of different kinds, it gives us completely different perspective of and completely different options how we look at the Livonian. So our idea behind all this is that this kind of collection that we have allows us to see from whichever perspective we come in. much broader picture than it would be in one separate database. And that is something that we can use as an advantage in the case of small data if compared with bigger languages, bigger cultures, because there, for example, in Latvia and Estonia, different data is handled by different institutions, and they have the problem how to connect the data between themselves. So for us, it is the small data allows the direct connection of and direct integration of data of various kinds. So our perspective in the future is that we want to build a system where we can from the item get to the folk story through the person and through the place where the person is living, or kind of map whichever set of data we have in the area. So this is kind of thing that is behind this thing, because what we want to achieve in the result, we want to achieve kind of a virtualization or virtual having this sort of virtual Livonian world that also offers much better opportunities for research and for seeing the whole picture of the kind of over the different areas, because language does not exist separately from the context. It is something that is connected, like everything is actually connected, like items, people, stories, and lots of more. So this all the tangible and also tangible heritage should be looked as one and not as like taken out one separate aspect of it. So it's basically it's also improvement, hopefully improvement in quality. So what we also have done, we have done quite basic things that that community needs in terms of even simple solutions like keyboards for the Livonian language. So for those of you who want to write in Livonian, just take root through page. So they've made for us the keyboards for both computers and also smartphones. So you can write Livonian, which is like basic need for everything. So then we have worked with the language acquisition. Already starting, actually we started like seriously work a little bit before COVID time, but especially during the COVID time. So there is a kind of a booster for digital approaches all over the world. And in Latvia, there also people realized that, well, we have this kind of isolation. We have to sit at home with kids, and there is no learning material in the digital platforms and stuff. And so there is a digital platform, Tava Klase LV, or Class LV, was created in Latvia. So, and they offered also some kind of Livonian language teaching. And what we did, we actually, instead of that, we made kind of a basic, we made a series that I told you also previous time. So 7 Livonian language lessons, which are like kind of a basic information on, because it was like clear that we are not ready to do any serious language teaching in this format, and these lectures are like each 20 minutes, and altogether it's a little bit more than 2 hours, and which is very far from sufficient language acquisition. So that was the first project, and then there followed also another project, like songs, specifically for songs dedicated for kids, was written by Livonian community composers. So this is another, so the same principle that I mentioned earlier. So we are very keen in having involving community in what we do and contributing back to community as well. So we have been also teaching and helping to teach Livonian kids in the summer school. And also like thinking about like how how really Livonian, how to improve possibilities of Livonian acquisition. And yeah, so this is a quite interesting project with these songs, because there was like every song is dedicated to specific vocabulary, but they are nice sing-along songs. And I know that people, when they start to listen to them, so there are some songs that are even too sticky to listen to because they stay. So, and now again, yeah. And by the way, these songs, they also have words, they have translations, they have also melody written down. So, and these are specifically used for so that those who learn the language, or teachers, can use them as teaching materials when they learn. So new thing is now coming up next week, will be out. So there are a series of 10 Livonian language lessons, specifically language lessons now. So this is very, very basic first steps. And these will go public next Monday. And this is something that was made together with Livonian kids. And well, there's more than 10 of them participated in the filming of these lessons. So, but this is kind of a new step. So this is a contemporary language acquisition methods based small course of, let's say, pre-A of kind of very, very basic introduction. So I hope that one day it will go further. But this is a part of language acquisition material that has been developed now and also approved during those summer schools with kids. There are quite a lot of interesting conclusions that come from that. So now finally, if we like look at the little bit broader in a sense of endangered languages, and especially critically endangered languages. So when we talk a little bit about digital technologies that we need, should we say, and if we take a broader picture, so for example, for Livonian, so there are two main groups of users for those resources and potential technologies developed for Livonian. So one is researchers, so those who are interested in researching Livonian language, intangible heritage, Livonian community, tangible heritage, whatever. So, but that is one perspective. The second perspective is speakers and those who want to study Livonian language and culture. These are perspectives that, especially in endangered language position, have to be kept very close. So every technology that is being built should work both ways. So they have to contribute for research, that's fine, but they also have to have this kind of back component. Because again, so that's a resource question. Because if you, as a scientist, as a researcher, if you do only research and not contribute back, so someone has to do it anyway. And there's not many people that can do that, and so this is kind of nice if it's possible, like every technology or every research platform to also to contribute something back to the community, so that it also, and it comes vice versa, because you need communities' help, for example, to like in our case, so to read things in, to help with the one thing that they know, and that's the language, and to help us to again do better research work. So if we one key technology that is kind of key technologies that are needed is like technologies for expansion and processing of language resources. So this is the thing that we have data, but it's hard to access it. It's either handwritten or it's a recording or it's something like that. But that data is authentic. That is something that we really need. So this is something that such technologies that help us do that is something that is very important. So this is like, for example, morphological analyzer, speech recognition, things like that help us to get to the content. So then another part is technologies for language use, acquisition, and accessing content. And this tools necessary for writing Livonian again, so the same spell checking and stuff that currently we are actually developing for Livonian as well. So then increasing functionalities of data that we have, and the key issue, and especially if you talk like automated translation or AI thing, that now is the big thing that's coming in, that it's very important also to get those tools that to help access access the corpora, access the actual Livonian material. So this is something that sometimes people think that, okay, so let's AI do the work, and so we will produce new texts in Livonian, or we will write just new texts in Livonian. So there is much more important that those people who learn Livonian use authentic texts that are already there, instead of writing low quality new texts in the end. So, and very, very final is what approach should be taken. So one thing is that it's really important to maximize usage of data and make, so just maximize the squeezing effort to get as much data out as possible. So it's important to interact with the speaker community and the community of the language and culture as such. So, but it works both ways. And there is also in cases like Livonian, it's very important to have also this kind of dynamic processes. So it's not static, because research and standardization and usage and acquisition, it all takes place at the same time. So we cannot wait for research to end so that we know how one or other thing is used, but we have to kind of do it in parallel. And even if we create like even smallest language material, it's important to make a mini research just to know, just to be sure that the thing that we are using and how we are using it is actually authentic and not caused by for example, authors or researchers' own feeling of the language or own perception of the language or background languages, for example, Latvian or Estonian or Finnish, that he has. So here is the very, very, very important, especially for endangered languages, is quality and authenticity. Because languages like Livonian and many others, so they are so exposed to majority languages, so exposed to contact, that it's very easy to kill the language. So this is basically the same thing that AI can do. So by producing enormous amount of low quality text, it's very easy to populate the picture with low quality things and just basically kill the language. So alter it alter it completely and unrecognizably. And this you don't need AI. It's enough with even with some publications that don't have authenticity and the quality of the language. They give this wrong perception of things. And that has been quite well visible in Livonian case as well. So thank you, and I'm sorry for taking a little longer time. But